So is this Four Guys on Sports?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, awesome.
Please enjoy this feature presentation of the Crooked River Radio Network. This program is rated for all audiences.
Four Guys on Sports. Four Guys on Sports. Four Guys on Sports starts now.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Good morning, good morning.
Morning.
And good morning out there in social media land. Welcome to Four Guys on Sports. Got a kind of a special show going for you this morning. We've got a guest. You've seen him or heard him on some of the other podcasts on the Crooked River Radio Network. But we have Tyler Danberg from Ohio State University. Morning, Tyler.
Morning, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming in. It's great to have you. We've got a ton of stuff that we're going to talk about Ohio State. We've been curious about. In fact, that was probably the big reason that I had Eric get a hold of you, because there was some stuff that was we've brought up in previous shows that has not, we really didn't get answers for. First of all, let me start off with a question. What do you think about the recent new hire, or the recent hires and stuff with Ohio State?
Starting off with football, I mean, what a wild last week it was for the coaching staff, with Bill O'Brien, the newly hired offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, taking the job at Boston College, and in comes Chip Kelly. And to be honest, guys, I mean, what a full circle moment, because Ryan Day, his big mentor was Chip Kelly, played for him at New Hampshire, coached under him in 3 different systems, and now Chip Kelly's joining his staff. It's going to be for multiple years, which is also crucial, because you're going to have to assume that he's probably going to want to dip into another high-level college program, maybe at some point as a head coach, maybe go back to the NFL in some capacity. Who knows? But it's just going to be really cool to see what he can do with his offense, especially a 2-back system as well. He's got a lot of experience, especially at Oregon, managing high-power offenses with a lot of different weapons. So he's going to be a really intriguing hire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the 2 backs with Quinshawn and Travion, that's going to be a nice little setup right there.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, Judkins and Henderson are both proven, and it's gonna be kind of thunder and lightning, really. You can pick your poison with what those two can bring.
Can you answer a question for me as far as why that last coach left after like 2 or 3 weeks? What the heck was up with that?
Yeah, so I think with O'Brien, it was just the head coaching vacancy. And Boston College, I don't think many people saw Jeff Hafley getting the offensive coordinator job with the Green Bay Packers. And it's one of those things where you'd have to assume that 2 opportunities pop up that you just got to take. For Hafley, it was the Green Bay job, back into the offensive coordinating side in the pros. And O'Brien was the guy they went to. I mean, he is a New England guy as well. He's got a lot of ties to that area. And I think it was a head coaching vacancy that opened up that he was obviously trying to get back to for the first time since he was in Houston with the Texans.
It just seemed kind of strange that he took the job at Ohio State, and then all of a sudden 2 weeks later he decided to leave it. I would think that there would be some kind of a contract there, wouldn't there?
I have not looked into it that much, and not sure how that works with a staffer that ends up taking a job multiple weeks later, that's certainly out of the ordinary. So it's a situation where not many schools or teams or programs have been in the past, but that I'm not necessarily sure why that happened or where is this where's this stand contractually?
Yeah.
Going back to the two-back offense, and years ago, being a Buckeye fan for years, and I remember when it was more of a 3 yards in a cloud of dust type of offense, so to speak. And then now that Chip Kelly's coming in, do you think there will be a balanced attack, as far as pass and run, or do you think they will favor the run or favor the pass?
I think if they're gonna favor anything, especially at the start of the season, I think they're gonna want to establish the run game, just because there are a lot of new pieces coming in at quarterback. Who knows who the starter is going to be? Obviously, Will Howard coming in from Kansas State's got to be the guy in line to take the job. But again, a good fall camp from anybody else can change that.
Yeah.
And then also too, like the wide receivers that returned, and when you return to Mecca Ibuka, that's one thing. I mean, he's going to be one of the top receivers in the country. You've got a young, talented core, and Jeremiah Smith, top recruit in his class. You've got Brandon Innish, Carnell Tate. You can spread it out, but I think also too you're going to want to utilize these two all-world running backs that happen to share the backfield.
I could see it being a pick your poison, so to speak, thing, but at the same time, and wondering if they will, how much will we see two backs in the offense at one time, and also the throwing the ball, especially with we don't even know who the quarterback's going to be at this point.
Yeah.
Which would you guys in college football, or at least with this Ohio State team, because you've just seen a lot of different but highly successful teams in the last 3, 4, 5 decades, do you like an Ohio State team that airs it out, or do you like a team that can ground and pound or find balance?
Both.
Fine,
I'm a balanced type of guy now. I used to really favor because like you said, years and years ago, I'm thinking of the Archie Griffin, the
Three cars and
Byers, and I can remember when seeing these guys grind it out. But I've slowly but surely become a fan of the pass as well. But I'm a balanced guy. If Nate comes on the show, he loves to see them sling the ball around like it's flag football almost. But I kind of like both, but I just really love to see it. But then, come on, Marvin Harrison Jr., after watching him, and come on, man, say what you want, but that was the best player in football this past year to me.
Yeah, but where do they go from now, or where do they go from there?
Yeah.
Well, they've always recruited well at wide receiver here in the last several years.
I myself have always been kind of a balanced guy too, like Gordon there. But I think one of the most important attributes to a quarterback is his ability to scramble. You're seeing more and more of that in the NFL. You're seeing a lot of these. It's really prevalent in college, and especially like Stroud. I'm going to tell you what I watched C.J. Stroud in a that Pro Bowl game that was on. That kid has got a rocket for an arm. There is no doubt about. He was throwing passes that were so accurate that it was just like he was firing a missile. Mm-hmm. And he's the kind of quarterback I like to see come out of college, stuff like that. I just wish we could get one and save him for a year or two till Shawn retires or whatever happens with him, if it happens at all. And I just want to see the his ability to scramble and everything like that. I think that's a really good thing to happen. And by the way, hello, Nate. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing well. We got, we had snow and stuff, man. So connection a little slow this morning. Was struggling to connect, man. Kept timing out.
This is my other brother, Tyler.
How's it going?
Hey, nice to meet you there. How you doing, Tyler?
Doing good. Like
That's
the
good.
Lakers background.
Yes, sir.
Nate, this is Tyler Danberg from Ohio State University. He's a student there, and he's in. You want to tell him what else you do, Tyler?
Yeah,
I know you're in broadcasting.
Why not? Yeah, so I'm a student broadcaster with our student radio station, Scarlet and Gray Sports Radio, and then a broadcaster for Big Ten Plus, which is the official streaming service of the Big Ten Network.
All righty. It's cool. Very cool.
I got friends at high places, Nate.
We kind of like Ohio State now.
So I've heard.
Yeah, kind of like.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, what do you think about? I heard that Day was a little perturbed over the last Michigan game. Now, there's two things that's going to change there. One is he's going to have a much better team this year, I think. But the other thing is the fact that Mr. Harbaugh decided to flee Michigan, which to me, that's easy money. What do you think? What do you think, Tyler? What's the chances of us bringing it back home?
Well, I think the chances are incredibly high, probably higher than a lot of programs going into the season, just because of, one, what they retained, and two, what they brought in. I think you could see some senses of urgency in the way that Ryan Day and his staff handled the roster. One, continuing to seek after top recruits, and that doesn't just happen to be at wide receiver. They've loaded up on the edges defensively. They've gone after cornerback after cornerback and a couple of great defensive backs that are coming in from high school. And we obviously saw what they brought into the transfer portal. They needed a staunch offensive line, and they go and they bring in Seth McLaughlin. And, of course, obviously everybody's going to talk about the Rose Bowl and the performance he had. But whether he's lining up at center or is one of the interior linemen, that's going to be a major boost because he's started almost 30 SEC games. And then the running backs that they brought in. I mean, the talent is stacked. And Caleb Downs, the SEC Freshman of the Year, coming into play safety, that does wonders. And I think the DBs, that wasn't a unit that needed much improving given how they returned Lathan Ransom and Denzel Burke, yet they go and get the number one transfer in the country. So you could see a sense of urgency in Ohio State that really shows they want to bring that back home.
I see it. And you're talking about DBs. I see the 2025 class, they have the top two DBs coming in.
Yes. They have a really good defensive back class, and again, Tim Walton, their secondary coach, is playing the NFL, won a Big Ten title at Ohio State. He knows what it takes to win and to win here, and the guys you can really see just buy into him.
Let me ask this question. So with the exit of Hardball from Michigan, what's your estimation of what the consensus will be with respect to, Ohio State? The expectation is that Ohio State's going to, they're going to bring it home this year, and Hardball has exited. What is that? Is that like, is it not as much? It's going to be appreciated, but is it like it's not as much where you couldn't beat that guy Okay, you couldn't beat him till he left, so now you can beat him. Is that, kind of, how do you feel? What do you anticipate? What do you think there?
Personally, I think that there is a little bit of an added edge knowing that Harbaugh's there, knowing the long-standing history and the rivalry between him and Ohio State. I think that certainly adds to something, but it can't take away the fact that Ohio State has the chance this year to not just beat Michigan once, but Michigan twice, and Michigan the same exact thing, vice versa. So I believe that, I mean, this game means everything. For some people, a win over Michigan might mean more than a national championship because in order for you to get to the national championship, you got to beat that team up north. And I think that no matter what, whether Harbaugh is here, Sharon Moore is at the helm like he is now and like he was as the interim head coach for that game against OSU in Ann Arbor, I think it's always just going to be a clash of the Titans.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. And I think that, yeah, Michigan is always a measuring stick for us as well as we are for them. And I only hope that, even though Harbaugh leaving, I hope that the Big Ten overall continues to rise and as far as is looked upon as one of the elite conferences in college football, because for so many years there was a while there where Ohio State was shining, but they were the only one shining, and they were, Big Ten was called the Marshmallow Conference,
But with the additions of Oregon and Washington, now it seems like it's going to strengthen that.
Yeah, because all the thing we ever hear is SEC, and the SEC is this, the SEC is that, and then of course when Texas and OU joined the SEC, so I'm hoping that, I always want Ohio State up there on the top, but I want the Big Ten to be the conference,
I personally think that the Big Ten now, I mean, for a while, they're going to be able to leverage, the shift in Alabama. They're going to be able to leverage that shift in leadership there at Alabama for a long time. And I think the Big Ten is going, and because of the fact that Michigan had such great success, I think the Big Ten is going to be the leading conference, or at least, clearly this, it'll be debatable for a while to come. Obviously trends, it shifts, with the passing of time. So I don't know, how long it will last. But here for the next, I would say this season coming, and about 2 or 3 seasons out, it's going to probably be looked upon, as an extremely viable conference. What I'm hoping, though, I'm really hoping, because Harbaugh left Michigan, I'm hoping that it does not take a nosedive, and then folks are like, well, I'm jumping off ship because Harbaugh left, and so I'm jumping off ship. Because if that happens, if that's the attitude, then I do see the Big Ten Conference suffering. I don't know. What's your take, Tyler?
That certainly can be the case. And also, when you take a look at Michigan's schedule, they did not get a really favorable draw in the teams that they have. I think, to your point, when one of the teams isn't necessarily good or up to standards, the game takes a little bit of a nosedive. And if the Ohio State Michigan game takes a little bit of a nosedive, then most likely the Big Ten might have a little depreciation. But I think that the rivalry is the rivalry, and even when you take out Harbaugh, it's still just going to have a very similar meaning. But there's no doubt it's going to have a little bit of an impact. There's no doubt about it, because what Harbaugh did to flip around the program, kind of out of that mini identity crisis about 4 years ago, during the COVID season 2020, and the fact that he was able to dig them out of it, it goes to show you, barring certain external issues as well, like it took a lot to turn that around. And also, too, when the sign stealing scandal came about, like there was I think for, I don't know about you guys, but for that Ohio State Michigan game that they played this year, I mean, that had the most inside and outside noise surrounding a game than I think I've experienced in a long time.
Going off of football to basketball, what do you think of the firing of Chris Holtzman?
It was a really interesting timing, just knowing that there are 6 games left in the regular season. But again, Gene Smith said at his press conference that this was the point where they needed to do it. They needed to give interim head coach Jake Diebler a runway as well to give him enough time. But what I will say on this about Chris Holtmann is it goes without saying that he's had struggles in the Big Ten schedule. They've lost 17 straight road games. They have not been strong in January since his first year, 6 years ago. But when it's all said and done, he did take this Ohio State program, Chris Holtmann did, to 4 NCAA tournaments. They were 3-4 in those tournaments. He won 137 games in 7 seasons. And I think he did enough where in most places, I mean, there is a shot where he keeps his job. But also, too, you got to think about where this program's going. Was it the right fit, especially with the talent he brought in? The guy can recruit. And personally, I think Chris Holtmann is an incredible guy. He's shows major appreciation to us student broadcasters, showed major appreciation to me, for which I'm very grateful for. On the basketball side, it was just it came to the point where it needed to be done at this day and time in the season after that 8-point loss at Wisconsin. And now enter Jake Diebler. He's 2-0 as an interim head coach or acting head coach at the time. And he's got a similar eye for talent. And we'll see what he can do. Maybe they can pull off an upset against, by far, one of the 2 best teams in the country in Purdue on Sunday.
I feel better in what you said, because you said that you did finish the statement with him having a good eye for talent. So with that, I'm under the assumption that he will be able to recruit well going forward.
Yeah, and again, who knows what is going to be the successor to Chris Holtmann, but I believe that Jake Diebler's been around the program enough, 8 years now, from video coordinator, assistant coach, associate head coach, now to interim head coach. He's done enough and has been around the program enough to get this team through this stretch for the final 6 games and change.
So who are some of the candidates that are looking at outside of Diebler?
So again, they're keeping this watch list very close to the brim. I mean, it's going to be an ongoing process. Also, too, you got to factor in Ross Bjork, the incoming AD, effective later on this year. So that boils down to him. From what I've been seeing, there have been a lot of different names thrown around. One of them, as a viable option, as of this morning, was Chris Jenn, who's on the Lakers coaching staff, very close with LeBron. That could be something. I've also been seeing guys that don't have that large of a buyout. I know Matt Norlander of CBS Sports and a lot of different great pundits around college basketball. Highly recommend him. Among some of them, I've seen Lamont Paris, who's done incredible stuff at South Carolina this year. If the season ended today, I'd put money on that he could probably be the national coach of the year. Shawn Miller, he knows plenty about Ohio State basketball. He's at Xavier. He's won at Arizona. I think he could be another really interesting guy. Those have been some of the names. I've been seeing those two especially Dusty May from Florida Atlantic. I think the question is, one, would he stay at FAU and continue to kind of groom this golden goose of a program at the Conference USA level? Maybe is he waiting for something to pop up at Indiana, his alma mater, where he coached under Bobby Knight? So there are a lot of different names being thrown out right now, but I think Paris and Miller could be some interesting guys to keep an eye on.
Okay.
Well, I think our time's getting a little bit limited here. You okay with it, Tyler, or you want to stay a little longer?
Yeah, I'm good for 5 more minutes. Again, I appreciate you guys having me on, and it's great to meet you three as well. I've known Pat and I've gone on his and Eric's show, but it's great to be. Well, first off, is it just 5 guys on sports today?
There you go. There you have it.
That's about right.
Got it.
Just like the hamburger place, 5 guys.
Yeah.
You better watch it.
That sounds good. 5 Guys Burger right there. Excuse me.
Yeah, it's amazing how that place actually got its popularity. Was from President Obama taking a bunch of diplomats out to lunch, and he took them to 5 Guys in Washington. A little bit of trivia. But anyway, we can continue another couple of minutes if you want, guys. Go ahead.
I want to say this. I guess being a little bit further removed now from college sports, I didn't realize that, or maybe I've forgotten about it, but Ohio State getting a new AD. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Ross Bjork is the guy. He's the current athletic director at Texas A&M, and really young guy. He's been around athletic administration for a long time. I believe he's 51 years old, and he was the youngest AD in the country at one time at Western Kentucky. Went from there to Texas A&M, and he's going to be coming to replace Gene Smith.
Well, they've done some pretty good things here at A&M. The football program, we've seen it. We saw them take a couple of big ones down here. So I'm good with that.
Yeah, what does the demographic fan wise look in your area in Dallas? Like, is it heavy Longhorns? How's that look?
It is predominantly Longhorns, and then there's that mixture of there's a lot of A&M and
then northern Dallas is more geared towards Oklahoma.
But we have Oklahoma. Get this guy. Man, that's like saying Michigan down here.
But in terms of demographics,
that team way up north.
Yeah, it must be way up north of Dallas, way north of Dallas. But yeah, it's predominantly Texas overall is predominantly Longhorn country, and then it's A&M is probably just right behind them. And that program, we watched it the A&M program just go and blow, and of course there's several other bigger schools down here, but
you got TCU also.
But working with a lot of guys who are A&M alum, so it's interesting at work from time to time.
You got at work, we both work for the same company basically, and it's either TCU, and TCU also is added in there, and then you got Texas Tech.
Yeah.
There's another one that is predominant down here too.
It's just like the Ohio State running back room. Pick your poison.
Yeah.
But I would just say it's kind of like when in Ohio. I mean, the school is Ohio State there in Ohio. That's the way I think the Longhorns are. That is that's the school and or the program.
Well, we actually have a couple of other ones that.
Well, you do. I mean,
that are
Miami
under
of
Ohio
Ohio.
State. You know, you actually got a very progressive Akron team now. You've got the Kent State um, Golden whatever Flashes, and you know those two programs have over the last 5 or 10 years have grown immensely. Akron U's got its own stadium on its own property now instead of using a rubber bowl like it was, and that stadium is beautiful. There's seating for a lot more than what the student numbers are there, and the program itself is doing pretty well. And you've got even clear up into the Cleveland area. You've got Cleveland State. I think they don't really have a football team, but their basketball team's decent. But those programs where Ohio State comes in and whoops everybody's butt, to keep it G-rated here. Those programs, Ohio State will come in and whip all their butts, but you know they're still up and coming progressive deals.
Yeah, one thing down here, Tyler, is football is a religion now, especially in the high school rankings.
Oh yeah, it's
like the Browns aren't.
it's different here than a lot of other places. I mean, we have schools here that have indoor football
plumbing
facilities to practice on. You know, it's different here.
and then you got high school stadiums that are like $60 to $85 million stadiums.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Football, it is paramount here.
That's kind of the way basketball is in Maryland, is that you have these schools that have these major facilities. You know, when I used to coach, you know, the young kids, a program tried to recruit me, you know, primarily really wanted my players, but, you know, and I went to their facility and it just totally blew me away. You know, the facility, you know, inside there, you know, I mean, it was really just a workhorse arena, really, to be quite frankly. They had like 6 courts. They had their, you had a real weight and training facility, you know. I mean, it's just unreal the way in which some of these high schools invest in these programs. And some of these are even middle school. It was a middle school program. And so it is something special. And the football programs up here, like the famed Madonna High School program, it's a lot like that same thing, in that they really invest in it tremendous. But changing the subject a little bit, with Texas being such a has this religious following for sports, you know, just a little bit about NFL, because I wonder what happens, man. The Dallas Cowboys, you know, not taking a dig.
Yeah, whatever happened to Dallas?
Because I'm wondering how, you know, that dynamic plays, you know, with such a tremendous how you say buy-in for sports in that Dallas, you know, area. You know, what's going to happen with Dallas here if they don't do something real quick? Because, you know, you got the shining star in Houston right out of Ohio State, you know, leading the charge there. You know, should we be looking for, you know, folks abandoning ship and, you know, hey, running with Houston now? Because Houston they're up and coming. You know, I mean, I kind of see it being liken it to the Lakers and the Clippers.
No, not even close. Not even close. And the reason I say that is this: if you want to compare it to that, then the Houston will be the basement team. And I say that because of this: Dallas is you know, they've been mediocre for almost 30 years, But if you look at it, as far as franchises go, Dallas is still what, number one or number two as far as NFL franchises go.
I would say they're number one.
And part of it is because of this. The owner, GM, who we don't think we're not totally happy with as a GM, but he is a master at marketing. And when you look at football, and they still call Dallas America's team, we hadn't been relevant since what, the 90s? Mm-hmm. But to answer your question, that's what I think. But after the meltdown there in the playoffs, I can tell you guys this, man. I had a garage sale. I was getting rid of all my stuff, and now I'm a Renegades fan. They've already won a national championship. What are they? The Arlington Renegades. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've just switched. I'm gone from the NFL.
You know, there are so many comparisons between your Texans or your Texans. Yeah, right. Whatever. Your Dallas Cowboys and our Browns up here. That it's a wonder you guys and I are friends.
Yes. Dysfunction.
You know, we both have dysfunctional families.
It's cautious optimism every year, I think, with these two franchises.
Yes. Yeah. That's well said.
Well, you know,
I'm all in this year. I'm all in on the Browns this coming season. I'm all in, man. I'm ready.
Vegas is picking them.
I'm ready. On what I've seen, I'm ready.
Vegas is picking them. They've got them by a minus 5,000, which is Pittsburgh's is like 1,400, and Cincinnati's is like 1,200.
Did you see what Travis Kelce promised though?
Yeah, 3-peat. We'll see.
Yeah, he said we're running this back. He said we're running this back, dog.
If I was picking Browns, as much as as dynamic as Mahomes, Browns in the playoff against Kansas, I'm rolling with the Browns. I think there's a lot to be learned from this debacle they had against Houston in the playoffs.
Well, Nate, what I've been saying about that game is that was the final straw as far as Flacco goes. Flacco was a team quarterback in Cleveland, and he beat Cleveland again.
And you know what, too, guys, is that, he was 39, and he's throwing 40 to 45, sometimes even 50 passes. It wasn't like he was, feeding it off to Kareem Hunt and Jerome Ford the entire game. He was slinging it. And you got to think, that takes a toll on the body. If I go out in the backyard and throw, and I'm 20 years old, my arm's going to be dead the next day, let alone have, 6'5" guys chasing you for 60 minutes, and you got to just chuck it downfield. So I think, Flacco fever was incredible, but you were going to have to think at some point he was going to show a little bit of weakness, and he still threw for 300 yards, but fact of the matter is those two pick sixes,
that destroyed it.
Those were a sore subject.
Yeah. There's cracks in the armor, clearly. And when you're throwing the ball that much, you don't win as many games when you're throwing the ball that much. Mm-hmm. They can say what they want to. I mean, the game has evolved in the NFL. Sometimes it's more of pass to set up the run, where it used to be run to set up the pass. But we've shown the guys who usually throw for the most yards, they aren't the ultimate winners. Usually, as I've heard it coined as empty calories, because a lot of times, a lot of the yards that you get are the ones that in the they look good in stats, but it doesn't really matter, because once teams go into their soft shell zone defenses and they give you all that underneath, just keep them in front of you so you can tackle them. So yeah, that's part of it. But yeah, yeah, I agree with you, Tyler, that over a period of time you're going to see the cracks in the armor of Flacco. But I thought that he did well considering this guy was sitting at home on the couch.
Yeah, this was a fourth quarterback, or he was a fourth quarterback they had during the season.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I think the reason that Stefanski won Coach of the Year was just because he put up a hell of a fight with all those injuries and everything else. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what would have been if this team would have been healthy? My God, they would have killed it.
Yeah, and to think that they were without Nick Chubb for all but a game in the first series. And I mean, you as close to a game changer as you can get at the running back position, that's Nick Chubb. And even if the entire rest of the team that had the injuries was hurt, if Chubb were the lone guy that they could bring back, they were going to be able to make a difference. But you're absolutely right, Pat. What Stefanski did with, I believe, was it 21% of the week one starting lineup out with injury? What Stefanski did just to even get him to that point is pretty remarkable.
Agreed. He was very deserving of Coach of the Year, and like I said again, Chubb. I mean, after Myles Garrett, I think he's the second best player on that team.
No doubt. Yo, absolutely. And I mean, Myles Garrett, the guy's he's a game wrecker. There's a reason why when all the players were polled for who's their defensive player of the year or who's the best defensive player in the NFL, there's a reason why they chose Myles Garrett. And I think TJ Watt is generational. You can make the argument that his numbers were better this year. I think that Myles Garrett single-handedly won more games. Like, I go back to that Colts game where he forced a pair of fumbles, picked up one himself, blocked that field goal jumping over the offensive line.
That was awesome.
And they only won 39-38. And it took a Kareem Hunt 4th and 1 goal to go to win that game. If Myles Garrett's not there, they lose that game. And they don't set themselves up for success down the road.
The one thing with Myles that I think Flacco brought to the team also was not only the experience, but these teams like San Francisco and Kansas City, they've all got a certain swagger about them. And it's because they've got smart people in the lead, and you've got quarterbacks that are really, pretty decent. And even even the Eagles, when they were before they self-destructed, you actually had these players actually bring a certain swagger with them, and it affects the whole team. You had Garrett on the defensive side, and when you brought Flacco in, it was another story. He brought that certain swagger because he's got a Super Bowl ring or two or whatever he's got. Was it 2 or 3? and when you have that, that's when your team is actually really starting to build. Your whole strategies and everything else like that change because you brought that. I'm trying to think of the word that I want to use. It takes you have to have the stuff in place in order to win, and you have to develop that. You're not going to do that in 2 or 3 years. And with the Browns, they've been developing it now for 4 or 5 years. And I'll tell you who the smartest one, as far as I see it, and a lot of people don't like him, but that's Andrew Berry. That is a smart dude. He knows who to pick up as far as players. He was the one that was feeding all those injuries, with other players, and it just worked out. He should have won. He should have won Manager of the Year or something like that too, because he did a hell of a job.
Yeah, his one weakness, I think, is just drafting wide receivers. And you could tell by the way they got Cedric Tillman involved. It shows that I think he's getting a little bit better in that. But my God, what an eye for talent he's got. Being a former defensive back, as he was, Ivy Leaguer too. He's smart, and that guy can draft. He can draft defensive backs like nobody else. What his eye for talent, just getting Newsome and Emerson, and I know Denzel Ward was Dorsey's guy, but even like a Cameron Mitchell, he's got a great eye for defensive skill pieces.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I myself think that I agree with Vegas. I think if they're going to have a shot at it, it's going to be the best next year.
Are you guys scared by the Chiefs winning this year? The Chiefs that lost at home to the Raiders, the Chiefs that their drops lost them some games, but the fact that they won this year, does that kind of scare you guys for what they can be down the road?
It does. And I'm going to say this. I think what we're going to see is they're going to make a splash. They're going to go out and get a true number one receiver. Now, that one kid, oh, God, what's his name? He's coming along, that one young fellow.
Rice.
Rice, yeah. He's going to be a good one. But we saw early on a lot of that was casted. They were dropping passes. And then we saw the Chiefs this year. I mean, a lot of the games that they won is because of their defense. And I'm watching the Super Bowl, and we're going back and forth in our group chat that, and I'm watching this game. I'm like, they're in control. I mean, because the other thing about it is something you said a while ago, Tyler. There are gamers in football, and you can say what you want about Pat Mahomes, but he is what? He is definitely a gamer. He really is.
He won. He won that Super Bowl game.
Yes. And the thing about it is they're just one top receiver away from being just, my goodness. If they can hold predominantly that defense together, and those defensive backs they have, man, those guys are, I mean, we talking about guys who, come on, Debo didn't have the game that we expected. Now, the other receiver did. He had a good game, but overall, that defense is scary good. So they are definitely, of course, and I'm gonna say this: the AFC is loaded. The AFC is loaded. NFC is 49ers. We got some teams that are coming up, but we got teams that are just, they kind of just a little above, I don't want to call them mediocre. They're subject to getting hot and beating anybody, but the teams that are loaded is over there.
Well, a lot of the Southern teams are that way too. You take Baker and his Baker the Faker, and even Jacksonville and some of the other teams down in the southern part of the country. They're mediocre, but there's a lot of room there for improvement, and they may just get there. The ones you never hear about is like New Orleans. I mean, what kind of a record did they even have? I never heard anything like that.
They were around 500, I believe.
Yeah. They really struggle. They need a solid quarterback. They need a solid quarterback.
They went very far this year.
Thing about quarterbacks. So if you're Chicago, what do? You keep Justin, draft receiver, maneuver with that first round pick to try to bargain so you can get more draft compensation. So maybe you can get, bolster, get a receiver and bolster the offensive line. What do you do? Or do you bail out on Justin totally and get Caleb? What do you do?
What do you think, Tyler? He's Fields is your player.
Yeah, he came a year before I did, but I mean, certainly there's a big connection to him on campus. I mean, who didn't love Justin Fields here? And I if I were Ryan Poles in this situation, I'd probably draft Marvin Harrison Jr. and hold on to Justin Fields. What he proved in that second half of the season, I think says a lot. I don't know if it's even that big of an upgrade to Caleb Williams that would justify them completely refreshing their quarterback room, giving it to Caleb Williams, and passing up on a generational wide receiver. But if they do that, and then they can trade Justin Fields, and you get the package of packages, because you'd have to think that teams like Atlanta, Pittsburgh, squads that just need a number one signal caller, they can put together the assets to get him. So you either have to buy, you have to commit. You have to commit on what you have to do, what you're going to do, and have a plan come draft day. Whereas you're not scrambling, and then you're out of options.
I'm thinking that they're going to keep him and try and get Marvin Harrison Jr. and maybe a couple linemen, and you'll see a different football team. You're going to see a different football team. That's what I'm thinking they're going to do. But the other option is a very viable option, because we can get something for him, because end of the season, the second half of the season, all his stock did was rise. I would, and I think Dak Prescott is a really good quarterback, but I would like to have Fields.
Yeah, the whole thing with Chicago, though, is every quarterback they've had in the last 10 years, they've destroyed. I mean, look at Mitch Trubisky. He can't even find a job now. Pittsburgh fired him here a couple of weeks ago. What you have to wonder why they don't invest in more coaching and get somebody in there that can actually train these guys and actually become something. I'm afraid of what's going to happen to Fields when he leaves there, because he ain't. You can tell he hasn't been coached that well.
Yeah, you could tell that, but also it's not that he has very much to play with. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, he was drafted into for lack of being more, I guess, diplomatic here, he was drafted into an awful situation. Chicago, y'all call them the Bears, I call them the Chicago Cubs. I mean, really, they're not Bears. They're not Bears. And I think it was really awful. It was unfortunate for him, being a Fields fan. I would love to see them do some maneuvering to where they could leverage, that first round pick to the utmost. Perhaps they could trade around, because Caleb seems to be with everybody the eye candy, and maybe they could negotiate such that they could get Marvin and still get some O-line help, and maybe even an additional receiver, maybe somewhere at the tail end of the draft, that would pan out better than what they currently have. But there's no way for me that I would let Justin go. I think he's shown his history is that he can play. And then also, to your credit, Tyler, you mentioned the second half of the season. He was fantastic. They were bad, not because of him, per se, but they weren't, terrible during the second half of the season either. So I would love to see them, do some serious negotiating and manipulating that first round, being able to shift it somehow so that they can get more compensation and get the players they actually need to complement, what this guy is and can be. That's my take on it.
Nate, I want to get before we wrap this up, I want to get a comment from you about something. After that last Ravens game, your buddy Odell Peanut Butter Jelly was his father came out and ripped the Ravens a new rear end. My boy expected better quarterback performance out of you guys. You set him up to lose. Blah 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 blah. Let's hear it, Mr. Odell Beckham fan.
I'm glad you allow for that.
I've been waiting for 3 weeks for this.
Okay, let me explain. See, this goes back to everyone assumed, they made the assumption that Odell Beckham endorsed his dad's rampant regarding Baker Mayfield in Cleveland. He didn't. He's a dad. I think about my experience coaching kids, and you don't know how many times I had to check a parent. Look, you be parent, I'll be coach. I have to give it to them like that. You be parent, I'll be coach. You're parent, I'm coach. In this setting, as a coach, I rule. I have dominion. You don't have a say. I don't care what you think, how you feel. I honestly do not care. Until such time as I disrespect your child, you can't say anything to me, period. Unless we have a conversation. But in terms of what I'm doing or how I'm not doing it. And so I'm looking at that and I'm saying, when you look at the Odell Beckham situation and the father, the father dynamic there with respect to the way he tends to lash out at teams, when he doesn't feel his child is getting this. And notice I use the term child as opposed to, Odell, because he's still looking at Odell Beckham like, this is my boy, this is my, and he's going to forever be his father, and that's going to forever be his son. And you got to step away from that, learn how to look at the game, just be a fan, look at your son as a player, be a fan of what your son's able to do. You can have conversation with your son about what he's doing or not doing, but you should not be having conversation with the coach or the leadership of the team about what they're doing or not doing as it pertains to that. You got to trust that they know best. You just have to, whether or not you believe that in your heart, you have to find a way to come to a happy place and trust that. So I don't think that Odell Beckham, said that or even felt that. I don't think he did. I think that that's his dad wanting to see his son excel. He's seen his son play all his life. He's been through it all with him, and he's seen it all. And he wants, he's his son's champion, and he wants to be there for him. So I take it like that. So I still think that Odell Beckham's a good locker room guy, a good talent. Unfortunately, he's been banged up and wounded a lot, and probably a lot of reasons for that. Baltimore, but being in Baltimore, I'm surprised that he wasn't, banged up more when you consider their history and the way players seem to get beat up there. Something wrong with their training program. That's a conversation for another day. But so I don't have a problem, necessarily with Odell, but I think his father needs to, tamper it down, back off just a little bit. Allow this young man to be a man and stop trying to intervene like he's still, quote unquote, your little child. I think that's a problem right there. But
yeah, I would like to go into this a little bit further, but I think we're about out of time here. Tyler, thanks a lot, man, for your time. It's really been a lot of fun here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thanks for having me, guys. Have a great weekend.
How does somebody get a hold of you?
So if you want, follow me on X, the app formerly known as Twitter, at Tyler Danberg, Danburg. And thanks again, guys. It's always a pleasure.
It's been a blast having you.
Thanks for coming on.
It's been a blast, man.
And I thank you and Eric for asking you to come in with us. It's been a lot of fun. We will hopefully do this again some other time. With that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this thing up. Anybody else got any comments before we go?
That's it.
Have a blessed weekend. We do have Radioactive coming up tomorrow night at 7. not really sure what the topics are going to be. I am going to follow up on something we did last week with the disappearing radio tower. Tyler, did you hear anything about that?
No.
There was a 200-foot AM radio tower stolen, disappeared from this place in Atlanta or in Louisiana, and nobody knows where it went. Nobody knows how it left, and nobody even knows how long it's been gone. They went to they sent a crew to do the spring cleaning of the site, and the crew calls the manager, and the crew guy says, "We're over here and there's no antenna. Where's the antenna?" And the manager's, "What do you mean there's no antenna?" "There's no antenna." It's on that is actually all over YouTube. Just look for disappearing radio station tower. The big question to me is that isn't some little dinky tower. That was a 200-foot commercial tower. Those things ain't light. Anyway, we're going to follow up on that tomorrow night. I've got an article that actually goes into a little more description of what happened and the latest on what's going on there. Eventually, there's been some developments with the speed cameras that we've been following too. So we're probably going to do something like that if I can come up with any material on it. With that, we also have Eric's show coming up Tuesday night at 8. I'm not sure what he's going to have topic-wise, but it'll be probably me, him, and Evan. Once again, Tyler, thank you for coming in. We will see everybody next week here at 11, and that's about it. If you have any questions or comments or anything like that, social media is the way to get a hold of me, and or you can write office@crookedriverradio.com. Have a good week, everybody. 7-3, and goodbye.